Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Kira Epstein. I'm the program coordinator for the new school at Commonweal. And today we are welcoming Callanish Society founder Janie Brown back to the new school to talk with Michael. And this is a conversation we are co-presenting with Commonweal's CancerChoices program. So again, thank you for joining us. We are recording this conversation and we'll have produced audio and video files available on our website and on the CancerChoices website. You can also find all of our recordings on the new school's other media channels. That's SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We have many other conversations coming up. You can check our website for the new school, which is tns.commonweal.org, or you can check on CancerChoices website. We have a special conversation coming up with Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, the longtime medical director of the Commonweal Cancer Health Program. She has published a new children's book, which is wonderful. I just got my copy, and Michael will be talking with her about that. We will produce the recording, and it'll be posted on our media sites afterwards. With that, I will turn things over to Michael. Again, thank you for joining us at the New School at Commonweal.
Thank you, Kira, and welcome to all. I noticed that Julia Rowland just joined us from Smith Center, and she's such a beloved friend of so many years who's made such an immense contribution to the field. So, Julia, so glad you and Lisa and all of your colleagues at Smith Center, we're just so happy to have you all and have everyone from around the country and from both Canada and the United States joining us. We're so pleased. So Janie and I are going to start, and we encourage you all to join us for just a moment of quiet together. And then I will ask Janie to read us a poem before we begin to dive into the work, and I introduce her in a little more depth. So let's just all go into quiet for a few moments together. Peace, peace. Janie Brown, welcome back to the new school and to CancerChoices. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me again. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Can you start us off with a poem, please?
Yes, I'd love to. I have a few poems that I just thought of this morning. So this one, as I think about our learnings from retreat, which is really what we're going to be talking about this morning in relationship to CancerChoices, and I'll say a bit more about that later. But I'll start with this poem called Becoming Ourselves, E.E. Cummings. We do not believe in ourselves until someone reveals that something deep inside us is valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch. Once we believe in ourselves, we can risk curiosity, wonder, spontaneous delight, or any experience that reveals the human spirit. So if I was to think about retreat, this poem really speaks to me of one of the essences, I believe, and I'd like to read it one more time if I could, Michael. Becoming Ourselves, E.E. Cummings. We do not believe in ourselves until someone reveals that something deep inside us is valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch. Once we believe in ourselves, we can risk curiosity, wonder, spontaneous delight, or any experience that reveals the human spirit. So what I love about that is it requires relationship to become ourselves. And retreat certainly brings to us the depth of connection. We'll talk more about that, but I just love that poem.
Beautiful, Janie. And we might even hazard the thought that for someone to reveal that to us requires not only relationship, but at the end of the day, for them to really reveal it to us, it requires love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's not just a relationship. It's what Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which psychotherapeutic jargon.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
How beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Janie, for those who don't know you, I'd like to introduce you in a little more depth. I'll first of all describe you as you describe yourself to the world. You were raised in Scotland, educated with a master's in psychology at St. Andrews University, and then a master's in nursing at the University of British Columbia. And you worked for many years as an oncology nurse and clinical nurse specialist at the BC Cancer in Vancouver. In 1995, inspired by the Commonweal Cancer Help Program, you founded the Callanish Society, a grassroots nonprofit for people living with and dying from cancer in Vancouver. You co-produced a documentary film, I'm Still Here, Young Adults Living Life with Recurrent Cancer, and your extraordinary book, Radical Acts of Love, 20 Conversations to Inspire Hope at the End of Life, describes your work of 30 years working with families with cancer. So that's the official version. And the unofficial version of our friendship is that we have both found each other deeply inspiring co-partners who have been faithful to these week-long cancer help programs for many years. For us, it's 36 years, and we're starting our 215th week-long retreat tomorrow, actually, and a Sunday, actually. And you have now done how many at Callanish?
We're on to 103, I believe. So we're a little behind you, but started in 95. Yeah.
So if we add 103 to 215, we get 318, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we've kind of devoted our lives to this. And not only that, but just found such a profound resonance with each other in ways that I would say strengthen and encourage us both. This is something worth devoting our lives to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said to you before we went on, I said, I'm just going to go for it.
As you do, I replied.
And, what I would really say is, I think we both hold this not only as the best work that we've done in our lives, but as sacred work, as holy work, as work that connects us to however we understand, whatever. It doesn't matter whether we think of it as the divine or God or Buddhist emptiness or a completely secular vision of this, that, just this is how we make the deepest meaning in some existential sense that suggests that all there is what is physically in front of us. I mean, you can hold it in any way you want. So long as there is this sense of this is where the deepest human connection, as I experience it, is. Yeah. So that's my take. What's your take?
Well, as I listen to you, Michael, of course, I remember the beginnings, and I'm so struck with how a moment of inspiration, which was really the Bill Moyers series, Healing in the Mind, where you did your first Commonweal Cancer Help Program documentary that I saw. And, these moments are very profound, where there's some sort of awakening, I would call it, where I'd been working in the cancer field for a long time, and there was something missing for me personally about this kind of holistic way of seeing the world and seeing one another in this experience of cancer. And so when I came down to Commonweal after that documentary, and I met you and Rachel, and you both, and I've said this many times in different conversations with you, but when we meet people who are living a certain kind of life of integrity, and who are offering themselves as a human, who happens to have some experience and expertise, but humanity comes first. That's what I met at Commonweal, and I met this team and came back to Vancouver, and Rachel, challenged me and said, well, just pull together a team of people you love, and that you want to spend a lot of time with. And of course, little did I know that what would become a beginning at Commonweal would become my life's work. And it's exactly what you said, Michael. And so I just, want to thank you again for, returning, actually coming up to Vancouver when we were 20 years in after having met you, and coming to see what we were doing. And, it's really something to have a mentor who, you've shown me the way really to dedicate, which I think is my nature too, to dedicate to the depth as much as I can into what is this experience of cancer for people, and what can I bring to it. And so many of us, on this in this webinar today, have dedicated their life to, being of service. And so I'm so grateful that I've been able to sort of channel my life's work in, and build community, which I think we've all done, community. I'm not me on my own at Callanish, like you're not you at your own at Commonweal. There's so many people at our back. And so this beautiful relationship of heart starts right here, starts with our connection, and then builds to our, people who are at our backs. And I just want to thank the CancerChoices team who are on the panel today, for just that dedication to the years of work to put this beautiful, incredible website into place, cancerchoices.org. And every time I open that website, go into it, I learn something. And I've been in this work like you for many, many years. And so I feel the web of connection at our backs, and I feel the people who have passed on at our backs, that we've known many, many people, who have lived with cancer and died from cancer. And I feel them all present in our learning and our continued, evolutionary process that we're in here as we, keep learning and moving forward with our program. So truly grateful that I've been able to do this. I started Callanish at 36. I don't know how old you were, Michael, when you started Commonweal, somewhere around 40 something. Was it?
I started, Commonweal's 46 years old now.
Yeah.
79. So
yeah. Do the math, right? So we were young and pretty naive, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but now I'm 64, and here we are at over 100 retreats, and that I really believe the retreats have made me who I am. I can't say it any other way, and it moves me to say that, because every person who comes through the door of retreat who's weary and tired and looking and longing for something that really means something deep to them, it's a new beginning, isn't it? It's a new relationship. And I think one of the biggest learnings for me in this retreat journey I've been on with so many people with cancer is that I've learned to say yes to first of all, to meet strangers over and over again, these 8 people that come and spend a week with us. And I've learned to know that however long that relationship is for, whether it's just for that week and we never meet again, or whether it becomes a kind of a lifelong relationship, is really powerful to say yes, knowing that we may part, and we may part through obviously circumstances, and we may part through death. And so that kind of yes to life. I mean, I was raised in a Scottish family, wonderful, lucky me, a loving Scottish family. But, this idea of kind of opening and, learning about what emotions are, and learning about how to help people express themselves, and doing that for myself. It's been an incredible, incredible journey. So I always say, learning to love strangers who you will lose, possibly and likely at many times, who you will have a short or a long-term relationship with, but it will end either with my death or their death. And, that's a really difficult thing to enter into, but one that I would never, I could never give up for another life. I can't know anyway, but Someone said recently this week, I would never want to work so closely with people who are going to die because I don't want to feel that pain. And so I think one of my greatest learnings, and I'd love to hear what you think too, Michael, is that learning to love, you also learn to grieve, and you learn to say a full hello, a full yes to a relationship that, again, may end and will likely end in some form or another. So I've learned to grieve, and I think so many people in our culture say, "I just don't know how to grieve. I don't know how to feel the pain." And as Mary Oliver says so beautifully, let your heart break open in the grief rather than close up. So there's lots to say about learnings, but I would say the power of learning to love a stranger gives me hope for the world. You sit in these circles, and the first night people tell their stories, as in your program too. And when you listen to stories, you activate, this heart activates compassion almost immediately when you're in community where you, as you said, with this unconditional positive regard that we know as love, that something happens within us that bonds us deeply. So after 24 hours on retreat, you can truly say, I love each one of these people, which again is a remarkable thing. And I can't really put my left brain to that, but I know what it feels like. And I know you know what it feels like. And at the end of the week, it's like lifelong friends. And that's a gift that's beyond measure, really, that we have friends all over the world. And thank you to all of you who are here for this conversation today. Seeing your names pop up. I saw my sister's name, who's in London. I thought, oh, she's here, so yeah, so lovely to, hi, Kate. I'll see you very soon, tomorrow night, actually. So anyway, thanks for the question of learnings is really a deep one for me as I sit and ponder, these almost 30 years of this retreat work.
That's beautiful, Janie. Before we started this morning, I just sat down and made a list. It's very haphazard. Mm-hmm. What I've learned, what we've learned. And it came in two lists of 7. The first is what we've learned. And I would call the experience of these retreats transformative for most, but not all participants. Average retreat at the end of the week, I would say 4 or 5, sometimes all 8, but many of them experience it as transformative. Almost everybody thinks it's incredibly helpful, but I won't use the word transformative for everyone. However, sometimes people discover the transformative dimension after they've been there. So it's not necessarily, but then the second point is most of it sticks. In other words, it's not just you have a transformative workshop or weekend or week, but a lot of it seems to stick with people. So a lot of people years later, we just did an alumni day conversation that several of the people here were on. And, people were saying, I came in 1999, or I came in 2006, or this is one of the two most, one person said, the Cancer Help Program and getting a service dog were the 2 biggest transformative events. You hear that a lot. The third is that people remain deeply grateful. And the most concrete evidence of that is that both Callanish and the Cancer Help Program are entirely supported by contributions from alumni who've gone before. So it's an ongoing gift. There's not like some big foundation supported it. And I know the fact that we charge only half of what it costs, to put these on. So, and we give scholarships. So, so it's an ongoing gift, which is an extraordinary thing. So then some people stay close, as you say. So others go on to their lives. They don't stay close, but there are an awful lot who remain part of the community. I think very important is that we both emphasize healing into both living and dying. And I think that's critical, that there are a lot of retreats that don't include the death and dying dimension, that in some way or another about, quote, keeping a positive attitude. Neither of us believes that keeping a positive attitude is the way to do this work. It's like experiencing whatever comes up.
Exactly.
And very profoundly, including the living and dying. And finally, on this list, that for both of us, I think it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, this is by far the best experience, best life experience we've had.
Yeah.
It's not just about offering something to somebody else. In a certain sense, it's deeply selfish.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I would rather be in a cancer help program once, you know, than any place else I could be. I always try to be on my birthday, and because it's the greatest gift I could imagine. So that was my list of what we've learned, and then I'll go on for one more and ask you for your thoughts. The second part is what it requires. And we both have found that it requires one person who decides that they are going to dedicate their lives to this. And then what happens is that other people who want to dedicate their lives to it join in that commitment, you know? And so as when you asked Rachel Remen at the end of the Commonweal Tradecraft of the Commonweal Cancer Help Program retreat, what you should do, and you mentioned it, but I loved her words to you, which was, you know, you said, what should I do? And she said, well, you go home, you find your people, and you start. I love that formulation of it. So we needed to make a life commitment. We needed to gather our people. And then a third thing that I learned from you was, you said for this to work, how many stones does it take? Referring to the Callanish stones. And we both agree, you know, it takes at least 3 stones in a circle. Stones meaning people who can hold anything that will happen. And I think both of us have more than 3 stones in the circle. You know, we have 4, 5, 6 stones. When you have that level of the number of people who can hold anything that will happen, creates a sense of safety in going to depth.
Exactly.
Because people know that they can go to depth. Another thing it requires is selecting the participants with care. This is not just for anyone. First of all, they have to be physically able to be there, but also it requires a certain maturity of, you know, a certain psychological maturity that they can hold it together during this week. You know, I know we screen for that. This is a hard one to say because we have so many friends at Harmony Hill and Smith Center who have done incredible shorter retreats. And I deeply honor profoundly what Harmony Hill and Smith Center have done with shorter retreats. But I think it's only honest to say that the reason we've stayed with a week, and I'd say a lot of the people at both Harmony Hill and Smith Center would say the same thing. It's just that financially it didn't turn out to be possible to hold the week-long thing. But there's a lot to be said for the week-long format. And I would say a week is the minimum of what I would really want. I mean, ideally, Virginia Beach used to say this, you know, she wanted 9 or 10 days, you know. So I would say that for a certain kind of work, people can get it. Actually, you know, we have our month-long online sanctuary programs, which are profound. And, you know, Smith Center and Harmony Hill both do shorter programs, and amazing things happen. People can get it very quickly, but there's a certain thing that happens in these week-long retreats that I think it needs. This point I would say is that it really helps to have a healing environment. You have a healing environment. We have one at Commonweal. So a healing environment is, and the seventh and final thing I'd say on this list is it takes real skills to facilitate.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't. And I remember Shanti Norris from Smith Center, when she came on her first cancer help program, she said to me, Michael, I thought originally that you just had these slots and you fill them with people in these different roles and you can do a cancer help program. She realized, no, it's who the people are and the depth of their skills.
Right.
The bottom line is lots of people show up at Commonweal and they say, oh, we want to put a cancer help program at this place, that place, and, help us do it. And yes, but we've watched many people try to sustain week-long cancer help program. Right. It's hard. It's hard financially. It's hard in so many ways. And I would say, if somebody says, I need brain surgery for my cancer, I want to find the best surgeon, right? Not true to find the best. When it comes to the kind of psychic healing / surgery, whatever you want to call it, that takes place in a cancer help program, it requires skills at the same level as a surgeon or an oncologist requires. So anyway, I'm just putting it out there.
Love it.
I'm curious about your reflections on that.
Yeah, I've got a lot of things came up for me as you were talking, of course. I think that at the crux of it, my inquiry all these years has been, what is the medicine? What is this medicine that creates this possibility for a transformative experience? And I'm so interested in that. I'm still interested in that. And I'm still kind of in awe at what happens when you bring a group of 8 people into a community of steady presence, is what I would say. I love the image of the stones. I've often said the Callanish stones that's what I learned from the Callanish stones when I went to the island of Lewis, was this circle of, the depth of steady, as stones hold that, putting your hand on a stone, you just feel that. And I think that takes practice, and, this beautiful Healing Circles community that's just developed over the last, 6 years, this holding presence in a circle, that sounds like, oh yeah, well, we know how to listen and we know how to, but one of the things I learned from you early, Michael, was your concept of healing conditions. What are the conditions for healing? Because really there's retreats, there's different kinds of retreats, but these are healing retreats. And we, our official name is Callanish Healing Retreat Society. So the word healing is very deliberate because it's a different kind of retreat that has healing at the center. So how I understand healing, I think all of us understand it in different ways, but that there's some sort of, Mark Nepo has a wonderful term, this incorruptible spot of grace at our core, that we're born with this, the incorruptible spot of grace at our core. So and he believes, and I really appreciate this, is that we're deconstructing the layers of the constructed self and personality and identities on retreat. I really think there is some way that when you bring people into a steady, safe, loving environment, that we want to let go of all these constructed aspects of ourselves. I mean, we're happy to, nobody knows our last name. At the end of the retreat, oh, you have a last name or you have a profession. And so much of the retreat, we're not sharing at that level of the personality of all the things we've done with our lives. We're sharing at what I call the soul level. And what makes that soul appear? There's so many people who speak of that, but I think it takes a very specific set of conditions. And so, I think people try to do retreats and they set it up and they have their agendas and their teaching tools and they're, wonderful. So many wonderful retreats and workshops exist out there. But this is, the more I work on retreat over all these years, the more it's like back to the bare bones of, how to be present, as you spoke of Carl Rogers, but what does that really mean? I mean, it's really a powerful thing to learn. Every time we go in a circle, we learn, how do I hold steady now in this? Somebody's angry, somebody's weeping, how do I just sit still and trust that there's an opening, there's a conspiracy to heal in each of us, and a longing to be whole, I really believe, right up to the moment we die and probably beyond, this desire to be ourselves, as E.E. Cummings says. And so if this practice over all these years, I think back to the early days in Circle, with my team, my wonderful team, and we were really I could feel my own instability in a sense, just like, how am I going to manage this? Things happen. And I think the Healing Circles community they're really deeply in this practice of learning now. How do you sit through all of it? And I think what it requires, and what I've learned more, and even on this last retreat I did, I've had a bigger awareness of this, that it is not my agenda for someone to heal. I'm not saying this is what you need to do to heal. It comes from deep inside, and it starts to light up, when you're in an environment where you truly can be yourself, and you can truly speak of, we say you can speak the unspeakable here. And people do, they try it on. Well, can I really speak the unspeakable? And they say something that reveals a very deep vulnerability. And lo and behold, the circle holds it and mirrors back that there's beauty in that's your life experience, that I honor it. I'll just read a quick poem just as I'm speaking. Can I read a poem that you know probably well? It's called The Healing Time, because I think what you said is we're setting deliberately, like the people who set the Callanish stones, deliberately placing the stones. It wasn't just it's not a natural wonder. It was humans in connection with the land and in connection with the sky, deliberately placing for the purpose we now understand. There was a lot of ceremony and healing happened in those places. So in our retreats, I think we're doing that. We're deliberately placing our people who've cultivated a steadiness to say, I will be with you no matter what. And so what a beautiful repair often of early life for many people, where, for reasons we understand, for pain that came through our ancestry, through our parents, grandparents, that people can't hold steady for us, who couldn't be there in the way. So the deep repair at the level of attachment, beautiful, clear, and clean attachment that happens in a circle like that. I think it is so, people say that, when they're having massage, or they're having body work, or they're being, touched in some way with, they say that's the original bond. Something's repairing. So it's profound if we're thinking that these repairs, and I see that, and people talk about that. So this Healing Time, Pesha Gertler's poem, it really always touches me, this poem. I'll just read it by way of explaining a little bit more about how I feel this medicine works. The Healing Time by Pesha Gertler. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again. Where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one, close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. So this poem to me is exactly what happens when there's an environment of steady, loving, safe presence, is that those messages, those coded messages, I love the hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin. Somehow it's like they just rise to the surface, and they rise in the form of a story or a gesture or some kind of expression through art, through creativity. Somehow those messages get to surface in the world in an environment where they can be received fully. And I do think that, yeah.
Could you read it again?
Yes. The Healing Time by Pesha Gertler. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again. Where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart. And I say, holy, holy.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, one of the many things you are in your gifts, and let me say that part of the beauty of Callanish and your work is that, yes, you were inspired by Commonweal, but you went on to create something absolutely as beautiful. And we've had you come down and co-lead our retreats. And so we continuously learn from each other. There are these learnings that come down through both of these. And I do want to say, you mentioned healingcirclesglobal.org, which our colleague Diana Lindsay and her late husband Kelly started with us, and which are now healing circles are spreading around the world, and our colleagues at Smith Center are doing them. And I do want to emphasize that while we both believe that there's something transformative that can happen in a week-long retreat, I just want to emphasize that transformation takes place in healing circles all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The ability of things that are ongoing, as opposed to just a week, have their own incredible power.
Yeah.
And we both know that, profound healing can take place on a plane ride sitting next to a stranger. So I don't want to fetishize the week-long retreats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something incredibly powerful can happen in that container.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can happen in an instant. It can happen somebody walking alone in a forest, So don't want to fetishize it. But having said that, one of the qualities that you bring to this that you help me become more conscious of is that you are consciously a student of, and in fact, a master ritualist. And I've always known that ritual in the Cancer Help Program was profound. Wayne Jonas, who's an extraordinary specialist in deep healing work, he actually thinks that an immense part of what takes place in healing is due to ritual. Just whether it's traditional Chinese medicine or conventional medicine or integrative medicine. But you have cultivated an awareness of, and I've watched you do it, incredibly powerful ritual. One ritual that comes to mind that you've done with us is which I'd like to ask you to describe a little bit, is when you do the healing stone ritual, and you've brought that down to Commonweal. Could you just describe so that people understand the preparation and care with the stone ritual is done?
Sure. I mean, I think that ritual, again, it's our birthright in a way. I think we're natural, all of us. We do it in such small ways. Your moment of silence and your peace, like that ritual is a Michael Lerner ritual that I lean into because it brings a much larger perspective somehow in those few moments. So ritual doesn't have to be like the grief ritual that you're describing that we brought down to Commonweal. But it's something that I think I've come to because Richard Wagami says this so beautifully, that the enormity of what we hold just living a life can really only be held fully in ritual or in circle, like in community. So and as our world, as you well know from all your work with the polycrisis and what we're all living with today, I do believe more and more that we're going to need, and we do need, community and circle and ritual to hold our own lives and what we're carrying and the lives of, the global life that we're all very much aware of. So I think ceremony to me is a way of being able to hold and express deeply. But it contains the expression, because I think free expression of emotion such as grief it can just, I mean, the big fear, and Francis Weller, of course, is such a master at this, but, says that you can get overwhelmed by grief. And that's the fear of going into the territory of grief. Or you can be too constrained because of that fear. So it's like overwhelm versus restriction. So ceremony allows you to contain the emotions of grief and to use what I think of as these beautiful gifts of nature. So we use a lot of gifts of nature to help us with these rituals. So in the ritual that you're talking about, Michael, when we came down to Commonweal, we had 40 people in the room doing a grief ritual. And just a shout out to Alison, who's on the line, my colleague here, who's our art director and a huge ceremonialist in her own right. We spent the evening before we set up that, when we were setting up the rituals, what you were saying about the care that it takes to set up a ritual is very, very important. Even if you're putting a candle and a centerpiece in the middle of a healing circle, you do that with a lot of specificity and, real thought and care, because it really matters, that holding that sacred center. So I can remember we were up late because we brought a whole bunch, we got Mary Liz, who lives close by in Mill Valley, or did at that time. She went to the quarry and got all these river rocks. And so there we were sorting river rocks because we wanted to have a certain number, because we had 40 people and you're trying to hold a circle for 40 people's grief. So we were laying them out and we'd shift. And then at one point the carpet wasn't straight, so we took them all off. And I mean, we laugh at ourselves, but there's something about that. And I go back to the placing the standing stones. Did they say which one should go in the center, and which ones at Callanish should go in this part of the circle? Like, it's a very intuitive process of setting it up in a way that then somehow sets a kind of energetic, is how I think of it. And we have the big kind of cauldron that we had brought down from Callanish, which holds, it's an Indian puja bowl that holds, again, offerings, and it holds water, and it's in the center of this beautiful circle of stones that, beautiful colors. And then, and again, this ritual has evolved over time. We used to do it with paper. So again, the rituals kind of inform you in a way. They say, oh, now I think we should move it in this direction. It's very interesting. It holds a kind of intelligence, I think. And so we were able to sit, and you were in that circle that day, Michael, with people that we didn't know necessarily, which again can feel risky. What are people carrying? Are they carrying trauma, PTSD? Like, can we trust grief enough to say, bring it here and we'll hold it, to our heart and say holy, which is really the invitation. So with the rocks, we just invite people to name their losses. So losses and griefs, it could be of people, of aspects of yourself, things that you've had to let go of and that will never be coming back, things that you're temporarily letting go of. And so people would take 6 or 8 or 10 rocks and write a word. And what I think that does is it takes what's inside and it starts to shift it outside in awareness. So then you see the rocks, you hold the rocks, and they have words on them, and you say, oh, there's my loss. So you're beginning to hold your own losses in a way that you can see and understand them. You're saying, here this is my load, And I remember the man who had to grieve his 3 comrades who he had fought with in the Vietnam War, and Billy, and his, he gave me permission to tell his story publicly, and I wrote about this. But, that was a profound moment in that circle where this man who had carried the death of his 3 friends, and he had 3 rocks only in his hand. I remember looking at him. I'd never met him before, but I could feel the weight of those 3, and they had the names of his 3 friends. And I can remember the moment where we invited people to, if they wanted to, place the rocks together in this water. Of course, water is such a beautiful symbol of sadness and tears. And I remember he almost crawled to that bowl in the center, and he placed them in. I can remember hearing them clunk into the water as they joined all the other losses. And then he went back to his seat and he started to shake. And this is where the presence, can we sit through that? I think we can have also, what's happening to him? Is he okay? And, so when I look around, I saw the other people, the other space holders. There were many Commonweal people there who I know, Jennifer and others who I feel like are so kindred, could hold it that 40 people. It wasn't just our team holding that. It was all of the people who've been in circle after circle. And he started to shake. And I remember I actually was sitting, I think I was sitting next to him. I happened to be, and I remember just putting my hand on him, just quietly. The whole circle stopped in the moment of him having his experience. And we didn't know what that was, other than it was extremely intense. And then I remember Steve, from Langley, he got up, he walked around behind the circle slowly. And this is the grace that happens in ceremony, that you cannot predict, you can't anticipate, but you can trust deeply. I've learned to trust it. He came right down round behind, and I remember he put his arms, under Billy's, under his armpits, and he held on to him from behind. And again, he was a Vietnam vet also. So this was the PTSD releasing. This was the trauma. And we ended up, after that ceremony, he asked if he could bury those rocks on the land at Commonweal. So I use that as an example of saying, we long for a place to lay down our burdens and to take them outside of ourselves and say, this grief is universal. These are my particular sorrows. But these are yours, and I want to hear about them. I want to receive them, even if it's in a rock, even if it's, in words. So these ceremonies, they seem to be coming now more and more for us here at Callanish. And I really honor them, the way that they appear in our midst. And I think that, again, in the creative mind, I often think of Smith Center as my creative inspiration. When I walked into the Smith Center for the first time and saw their gallery, that the first thing you meet is an art gallery. It's like, it just really moves me, that the commitment to the creative at Smith Center. So kudos to all of you there. Just that this creative force is really the life force. And it's so you can be very, very ill and you can touch a piece of clay, or you can, put color on a page, and you can feel your connection to your life force, which I think is what the retreat does so often. It helps people reawaken their senses. So they do this work of uncovering the layers, letting down the burdens, and then suddenly in behind that comes an energy of inspiration, an energy of, there's a kind of waking up. And so the joy is really close behind that, behind that or underneath that pain. So if we truly, even if it's one-on-one or in a circle or in all the ways that we do, hold a space for people to lay down what they need to, then they meet themselves, because they can then begin to trust their own emotion, their own, their own ability to touch this tender and difficult, these difficult aspects of life, incredibly challenging aspects of life. And then they remember the other aspects they still have that have gone missing. So we see that so much. I'm sure at Commonweal, I know at Commonweal, the joy, something else starts to move. This connection to life. And so if we can die with a connection to life, what an incredible thing to know ourselves at the end of our life, and to know who we are, and to know that we can trust the depth of our emotion. And so ceremony just creates a very sacred space for that, for the holding that we do in every circle, in every group. And I think the ceremony just adds a layer, I think, of safety and beauty, which I think helps everything. And then this kind of courage that comes when people go before us to say, here are my sorrows. Oh, okay, maybe I can put my sorrows in the circle with courage. We give each other courage. So that's a long answer to your question about ceremony, but it's truly capturing me more and more as I get older.
I want to, again, go to a point about the skill that ceremony takes. The old phrase, we take it, for example, for granted that somebody is, quote, the master of ceremonies for an event. But in fact, master of ceremonies has a very profound significance in all the great traditions. And I know how incredibly painful it is to me when I'm in a circle and somebody freelances a ceremony or a ritual and they do it badly. Mm. And how incredibly jarring it is. Mm-hmm. Asked to participate without my permission in a badly done ritual or ceremony. So precisely the power of ritual and ceremony is reflected in what happens when it's not done well.
Yes.
And I know for myself that when we're doing an event at Commonweal and somebody says, can I do an X ritual? I have to say to them, I'd like to ask you to hold that for now. I have to have the authority and responsibility to protect the circle from freelance ritual, which might be well done or badly done, but I don't know that it's going to be well done. And the impact on the circle of a badly done. So just talking about how deep the skill that I needed to hold.
Yes.
Nancy, would you join us and bring up the CancerChoices site for us? Thank you, Nancy, for bringing up the site. We just want you all. Nancy Hepp has put over 10,000 hours into this site, and before that, we put another 10,000 hours into its predecessor, Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies, and we are grateful, and I have to say, honestly, just extraordinarily, what can I say, holding wonder that this has been possible. And would you navigate us now to the 7 healing practices? So Nancy's going down to integrative cancer care. And you notice there are choices in conventional care and self-care and complementary care. That's how we divide them, the conventional care decisions, self-care, and complementary. So click on choices in self-care, and that brings up our 7 healing practices right there. And we'll click on that. And so the reason Janie and I agreed to bring this up for you is that there are many variants on this. Dean Ornish has 4, other people have different numbers, but moving around the circle from the top right, moving more. Now, Julia Rowland long ago described the evidence on exercise and moving in cancer as particularly robust among these. So let's just click on moving more and see what happens. So moving more, moving your body more. And let's go to what does the research show me on moving more? And so we click on that. And what do we get? We get where do we go there? Yeah, here we go. So treating cancer, we've gone to treating cancer. And so you can see cancer as a whole, good evidence of moderately better survival among people with higher activity levels after diagnosis, modest evidence of possibly better chemotherapy completion rates, but no evidence of improved response rate or survival. And but going down to advanced cancer, preliminary evidence of better survival. And with breast cancer, strong evidence of moderately better survival among people with higher activity levels, good evidence of moderately better survival among people increasing their activity levels after diagnosis, and preliminary evidence of better cancer-specific survival among people with any level. So let's just go back to the 7 healing practices overall and just look at the whole list again. And we're getting back there. Okay, and scroll down so we can see the image. So what I did there was just take you into one of these. So, we look at the evidence on moving, on managing stress. Sleeping well is incredibly important. Creating a healing environment, sharing love and support. Janie and I talked about eating well. But right in the middle, we place what we regard as the core practice, which is exploring what matters now. And could you click on that? Let's see. So this is, I would argue, what is really central to this work. And can you scroll down just a bit, Nancy, so we can see what happens? Yeah, that's a long letter from me, but let's go to, bring us to something interesting about that other than, here we go, keeping and exploring what matters now. And scroll down just a little bit more. Oh, that takes us to healing circles. Let's turn it off for a moment, and or just go back to the image of the 7 practices for me. You're just above there. Great. So, Janie, we talked about this as a useful, what do you call it? A useful emblem of what we're. How to say a little bit about how you hold our particular list of 7 in your Callanish.
Well, I think that they're definitely, when, in relation to what you've described and we describe as the conditions for healing, it fits. If we think of what we do on retreat in regards to some of these things, that, food is central. And food, that is research-based, as we know, plants, organic, some organic fish. And, so the food is really interesting to me because, again, all of these categories actually have such a strong kind of connection to culture, background, personality. There's a kind of body, mind, spirit level of all these practices. So, for example, the eating well, we had a woman come on retreat who didn't even understand what the food was we were providing. She came from a background that didn't know what healthy eating was in our view of what healthy eating was. And I remember our main cook then, Kathy, after about 3 days, went up to her and said, like, what's happening? You're not really eating anything. And she said, I don't know what this food is. I don't know what brown rice is. I don't know what quinoa is, and all of the things we, think is and know is healthy. So Kathy said to her, so what do you usually eat? And she said, well, I eat basically meat and potatoes, and that's all I know. And so then when we looked at her in terms of her retreat experience, we were giving her something that was not actually helping her in some ways because she was anxious about it and wasn't getting enough food. So what Kathy did is she went out and she bought a tiny little piece of beautiful beef, and she made her mashed potatoes and gravy and some vegetables. And I thought, now that is meeting people where they are. And I thought, we can't get too rigid. And that's what I love about this website, this beautiful opening up of the research base, which I think, I'm always looking for that. And I love how sound these practices are in terms of the research. I think it's very powerful to know that, this is how to eat. But then there's all these other layers, aren't there, about culture, people who don't eat Western food. How do we manage that on retreat? And we've learned so much about, I'm just taking food as one example, and we have to really say, what is nutrition for you? And not be too prescriptive, because this is the problem, I think, with so much of the cancer world. It's, you do these 10 things and you're going to be fine. Of course, this isn't how it works, but there are definitely, and that's what I love about the site. It's not prescriptive. It's saying, this is what we know. This is what we know about these foods. This is what we know about exercise. This is what we now really understand about sleep. So I love that. Like, I love that within an openness to say, who are you and what can we do and what's healing food for you? And I just found that so moving, that this woman was eating her little steak and potatoes and feeling at home suddenly. Somebody noticed, somebody cared about her. So this is a powerful thing in all of those practices, that what does sleep mean to each person? It's so different. There's so much anxiety about sleep now. We have to, so all of it. Then you've got this beautiful section on managing stress, managing stress about the prescriptive nature of, what you should eat and how you should, all these things. So I think what we do, and I know at Commonweal too, is you try and lift off all of that, and uncover what is your path and what can you manage. I think it's overwhelming to think I've got to tackle all these things, but I love that you can take one of those 7 practice and say, okay, sleep is the biggest thing for me. It's causing me the most stress, for example, and then go into all the the research and start to begin to tackle this very important piece of well-being and health in the midst of your cancer experience. So I think it's powerful to think of ourselves in relation to what we're supposed to do, and then what feels life-giving. For some people, walking in the forest is terrifying. Forest bathing is everyone's talking about. For some people, they won't step into a forest. They've never been in a forest. They don't know, is it a safe place? So I love that we, I think in all of our work and all the centers, we're very much about the individual. We're not saying here's a prescription for you, but if you're interested to learn about food that we understand through science. So I love the balance, that we try to hold this perspective that we are unique and that we can't really tell people what they should or shouldn't do, even though we like to do that. I certainly have learned about how to hold back more often and trust the person's own intelligence about what they need to heal.
Thank you. Kira Epstein just put up a note saying that if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We have another 20 minutes, and we'd love to have your thoughts and reflections, and we'll get to any questions we can. Janie, I so agree. People can feel so overwhelmed by a sense of all the things they, quote, have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a delicate balance between putting out 7 healing practices. We know they have benefit, but how careful we are about the evidence.
Yes.
There's moderate evidence of this and strong evidence. Now, one thing I really want to emphasize, which Donald Abrams, our colleague, often says, is he says, the absence of evidence is not the same as the evidence of absence. The absence of evidence that exercise, for example, is more than moderately useful, is not the same as the evidence that that it's not true. God knows I know people who have gone on strong exercise regimes who've done incredibly well with their cancer. And also not only the cultural uniqueness that you pointed to, but the the psychoneuroimmunological individual of all of us, and how it is. I remember Mark Renneker, our colleague, I once asked him after he had done a beautiful exposition of all the things that one could do. I said, how do people find what is most useful to them? And he literally said, I so often find that if they trust their intuition, they find a way to the right thing.
Right.
And he talked about a woman with an advanced cancer who had gotten in touch with a rancher in Wyoming who had some kind of herbal thing that he was promoting. And she asked Mark about it. Mark called the rancher, and the rancher said, I mixed this and that and the other. Mark decided there was no evidence of harm. Well, he supported the woman, and she had an incredible response. So, we talk about placebo in a denigrating way, but in fact, if we hold that some real activity that takes into action is going to be powerful for us, where's the harm?
Where's the harm?
Donald Abrams so often says, the lower the evidence of harm, the lower the necessary, requirement for benefit.
Right.
So just that sense that our intuition can be incredibly powerful. We elicit that in cancer help programs. So I'm looking at some of the wonderful comments here. Janie, when will your book on ritual come out? Your book?
Yes, that'll be my next book when I have time to write it. So the first one took 8 years, so I'm not promising anything very soon. But I would really love to try and put some of these thoughts down, and I've started. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Let's see. Nancy pointed out that our philosophy at Cancer Choices is that everyone has their own wisdom and make your own best choices. We want to give you the best information. So true. Robert said, I think the core healing that comes in healing circles, that's Robert Ferraro, I believe, comes in large part from being listened to by others in a circle in a non-judgmental, accepting way. Janie and Michael, would you comment on that? Janie, any reflections?
Can you just repeat the question part of that?
Robert said, I think the core healing in healing circles comes in large part from being listened to full in a non-judgmental way.
Yes, I support that completely. I think that listening is a skill that we think we know how to do until you get into a circle and you realize what you really want to do is disagree or ask a question, and so the power of being in a circle where you have to hold your comments and only listen, I think is really a big part of the medicine. So, we've been in so many circles where people are giving advice and, wonderful advice sometimes, but sometimes not so much. So, what Nancy just said, this idea that you're really helping people carve their own path, that's true in a circle too, so listening is, Rachel's got such a beautiful passage in her book, Kitchen Table Wisdom, on just listen. I have read that every single cancer retreat that we've had at the very beginning, because it is about the power of listening, and, caring about what someone's saying is more important than understanding it. I mean, I just think this is again, as you said, thank you for that comment, because I think listening is very profound, and it's more profound than speaking often. I've learned most of what I know by listening, if I think about it in these circles. I'm so quick to jump in with what I think is this or that. And it just has changed my perspective so many times by listening to someone's life story from their perspective. And with all my projections and judgments and beliefs, it has to dissolve in the presence of listening, because you can't hold on to your opinions when you don't get to express them. So the power of the circle where you get to sit, you commit to sit and listen, is the deepest learning in my life, I would say. I've read a lot of books, and Michael's read a lot more books than I have, but I get most of my wisdom, my information from listening to people and really, really trying to not miss a word because of my own noise inside, because often we're full of our own noise. And so sometimes I realize I've missed something someone said because I'm in my own story and I'm thinking about something that it's triggered in me. So what a beautiful gift to give one another is this quality of attention.
Julia provided the answer to Michelle Cassidy's question. The name of the E. Cummings poem is Becoming Ourselves. DJ asked, do you find the scientific medical community has embraced the practices of Commonweal over time? That's a great question. I would say there is, when I first wrote Choices in Healing 25 years ago, all complementary therapies were regarded as quackery. Mm-hmm. And my book was the first to be well-reviewed in the New England Journal of Medicine and Journal of the American Medical Association, New Scientist. The first cut through the view that it was all quackery. And then I helped the American Cancer Society change its page that called it all quackery and began to embrace at least soft integrative practices. So yes, there has been a change, but it is often quite glacial in pace. And the nature of the field of integrative cancer work is that the research and clinical experience is always moving ahead of the establishment. So while there are integrative cancer centers now in most of the NCI major cancer centers, they practice what I call integrative cancer care, quote, light, like light beer. They don't go in depth into many of the things Janie and I are talking about. It's the step, and people really benefit from them. But meanwhile, the evidence keeps moving forward. And so I think it's in the nature of the division that it will always be behind. Because there are always pioneers, and the pioneers can be right or wrong. But at the same time, the medical community itself has immense capacity to be right or wrong in the literature on conventional care. So, for example, some of the leaders in conventional care who I've known well will tell you that over-treatment with conventional cancer care is extremely common. That's just a simple fact. And that can cause a lot of suffering, a great deal of suffering. So, the old saying, if all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. There are prejudices and shortcomings on all sides. So our effort, when you really think about it, there are the intensive programs that are offered at Callanish and Commonweal, then the briefer but still extraordinary programs offered at Harmony Hill and Smith Center. There's conventional care, there's self-care, there's complementary care. What CancerChoices is trying to do, Janie talked about, how in the Cancer Help Program, most of what we do is listening. But what we don't do is what CancerChoices does in depth, which is help you navigate conventional self-care and complementary care. So I actually want to ask Nancy to pull up for a moment our research on aspirin, which is such an easy entry point. And, Janie, one of the things I'm so aware of is that there are people who have the sense of agency and the sense of intention to do intensive health promotion work using this practices. It's so valuable for the people who don't have a strong sense of agency and don't have a strong sense of intention, but they want to do things that are good for them.
Yeah.
So my brother, who's an oncologist, he is the one who said, yeah, aspirin is really useful. So if you look at aspirin in our search therapies, so this is, and you look at this incredible rating system, which Nancy developed, we give a ranking for treating the cancer, optimizing your body terrain, managing side effects, reducing cancer risk, use by integrative oncology experts, safety, and affordability. Well, aspirin is an incredibly easy place for somebody who doesn't have a lot of sense of agency and not the ability or the intention to do a strong health promotion program to do something really useful to themselves. So let's go down to metformin and do the same thing. And again, oh, wait a minute, it was melatonin that we wanted to go to, wasn't it? No, it was melatonin, right. And look at this. This surprised Nancy, and it surprised me. With the 5, the highest rating, it gets a 5 for treating cancer. It gets a 4 for optimizing your body terrain. It gets a 5 for managing side effects, 4 for reducing cancer risk, 4 used by integrative oncologists, safety 4, affordability 5. Well, that's incredible. I didn't know that before Nancy did all this work. And so, those are 2. So let's go now to vitamin D, which is really interesting. And again, it gets a 5 for treating cancer, a 5 for optimizing your body terrain, a 3 from managing side effects, and reducing cancer risk of 5. So again, it's very high. But Nancy, if you could come on verbally for a minute, because you discovered something really interesting. Tell us about the subtlety that you discovered on vitamin D, which is really important.
We discovered that for just about everybody, having a deficiency in vitamin D is very harmful in terms of cancer risk and cancer survival. However, there is an upper limit, especially for men, that having levels that are too high also increases your risk.
And it increases prostate and lung cancer risk. Is that right?
Yes.
Specifically. So this is the level of subtlety that we get to. And these are the things we don't cover in, certainly not in depth. I do some on it. And in individual sessions, I will pill this up and show people how to use it. But we don't focus on this. As with you, we focus on psychospiritual healing and diet and all those things. And in healing circles, we don't focus on it, although we can through learning circles. Purpose of Cancer Choices is to be the place where people can get that information. And
wonderful.
Yeah. And Nancy, we can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you so much. Wonderful resource.
We'll go back to Catherine Gale. When my husband passed at 10:15, friends around the country lit candles at their altars for the sake of One We Love and Are Losing by Phyllis Cole D. I believe it carried him peacefully out of this embodied life. And Julia said, what a beautiful and moving ritual for Catherine Gale. And the new school's reminding us, Robert Ferraro reminds us, thank you for your response. Listening is essential. My comment went more to the power of being listened to. To be really heard is such a wonderful experience. It's where I find my healing in circles. Thoughts about the power of being heard.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Rob. Nice to think of you there. Haven't seen you for some time, but yes, equally, the power of being heard is, again, I think when we speak about the medicine, if someone can truly hear us, it is the mirror that reflects back that we're okay. We're okay just as we are, and all of our life experiences and our responses to the world are accepted by that person sitting in front of you or across from you and so it's a very hard, I think, as anxiety goes up in our world, we're becoming really less good at listening to one another because the noise inside is so great. I remember when I went to Spirit Rock for one of my first meditation retreats there. And I remember someone said, sit in the first or second row of, 100 people, because there you will feel the presence of people who have less noise inside because of their meditation practice. And I had never experienced anything like it in my life, sitting among a group of serious long-time meditators. And it was like that. There was a spaciousness around me, because you can feel the noise in the person listening, can't you? I mean, you can really feel it. You're trying to express yourself, and you feel in front of you is someone who is very preoccupied. And of course, we're all extremely preoccupied. So what do we need to do to find this space inside? And I think the more time spent in circles, the more I've learned how to do that, to just empty out for that time. And it is like that. Can I just put all of that to the side, and bring my presence? So I love the question, Rob. And I think being listened to is profoundly important and quite, as you said, quite hard to come by outside of these sacred circles and relationships that we have. And thank goodness we do have them, because then we become better listeners, I think, when we understand what being heard feels like.
Thank you, Janie. Lauren Doyle asked a great question. Can you review how to navigate the therapy evaluation screen, please? Lauren, we have spent so much time trying to make Cancer Choices as easy to navigate as possible. We're still working on it. But here's what I would say to you, Lauren, and to all of you. Cancer Choices is quite encyclopedic, okay? And the nature of an encyclopedia is that before you can use it well, you kind of have to figure out how to navigate it. So Nancy just put up, Cancer Choices has a handbook, How to Integrate Your Choices. And you can go to that. But it takes, I would just be willing to recognize it's like looking at a new map. And I would just be willing to take some time saying, okay, I'm not going to figure this out right away. And just start exploring and pushing things that you're looking for. There is a search button up at the top that can really help. The other thing, and we'd love to make this better, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of any page, there's a whole list of specific links down at the bottom, which I find really useful. But we're constantly trying to improve the navigation. And just because it is quite encyclopedic, it is helpful to be willing to take a little time to, and then once you understand it, it gets much easier to navigate. And Nancy has How to Integrate Your Choices, including, this is the answer to Sudhi Solomon, including finding integrative oncologists and other professionals. So Sudhi, what I would say, also Laura Pohl points out, you can request help from a volunteer guide on the Cancer Choices website. That's a critical point. And Lauren, thank you. Society for Integrative Oncology can be a source. Absolutely. It's an excellent source. And we work closely with the Society for Integrative Oncology. Julia writes, as a long-term quality of life researcher, as well as psycho-oncology clinician, I've learned time and again, there is something profoundly and deeply healing about being able to tell one's story to be heard and witnessed. She's backing up what Rob Ferraru those, and one thing I will say about finding an integrative oncologist, there aren't a lot of conventional oncologists who are deeply integrative. So usually what is involved, for my money, is I would not pick your oncologist based on whether they're integrative, nor would I pick your surgeon. What you really want is the best oncologist for your type of cancer, and the best surgeon or radiation oncologist. They have their hands full simply staying on top of the literature and find someone that you feel has your best interests in heart and is just good at it. Then I tend to look for the integrative piece with people who specialize in that. And so there is a society for naturopathic oncologists, ONCAP, I think it's called. Maybe somebody can put up the link. And they have a list of naturopathic oncologists who have completed their training. And we've worked closely with the naturopathic oncology community as well as with the Society for Integrative Oncology. So the Society for Integrative Oncology will have the more conservative people. There we go. Nancy Hepp put it up. You'll get the more conservative integrative oncologists, mostly more from mainstream medicine. And ONCAP is a really good place to get the naturopathic oncologists. Remember to look for the ones who've completed the whole training. And we find some of them to be really helpful. And also, there's so many other areas. A really first-rate traditional Chinese medicine practitioner is an incredible resource. There's so many others. So it's sadly not one size fits all. We have to find our way. So with that, Janie, coming back to you at the end of this lovely time, I just feel so blessed by our partnership. I feel so blessed that so many of our colleagues for Smith Center were on. Lisa Sims, our extraordinary director, and Julia Rowland, and all our colleagues at the Smith Center, and all our friends from around the country, our Cancer Help Program alumni, your colleagues from Callanish. What a blessing to come together. Any last reflections from you about...
Well, I'm going to read a poem, which is my reflection, because I think that my underlying message is to really, we're talking about listening, trust the person in front of you to know their way, just what you said, Michael, that if we can really trust that they have, with our support. So this is a great poem I found this morning. I hadn't read for a while. And it's a short poem because I know we're out of time. It's called If I Sing by Martin Jude Farewell. If I sing, I weep. If I sing joy, even sing joy, I weep. If I weep, if cries splatter from me, if I sputter, snot, and spit down my chin, my shirt, your shirt, if I shake and shake until you fear I'll shake apart, don't be afraid for me. Don't be ashamed. I will not break from this, will not die, but from lack of it, from the closing. And I will not close anymore, will not deny anymore the child I was, who could not cry out, has kept crying in me. And now that I can cry, I will sing. Even if my song comes shoved out on the wave of snot and spit I swallowed not to cry, I will sing. I love that poem because it's sort of all of it, receive all of it and don't be afraid for me. I will not break. That's really what we do, isn't it? Give people faith that, they have what they need, and you can cover me in snot and spit and I'll sit through it all and say thank you. Yeah. Thank you for this time, Michael. It's always such a blessing.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you who've been with us. It's such a profound joy. 54 of us on. 2 times 54 is 108, which is a magical number. So we're just the right number of us on. And bless you all. And please spread the good news. Spread the good news about Cancer Choices so that people hear about it. We really want, who is the author of If I Sing?
Martin Jude Farewell, F-A-R-A-Well, Farewell, If I Sing, yeah.
So bless you all for being with us, Janie. And Kira, back to you.
Thank you so much, Michael and Janie. It's a really great conversation. Just a reminder, if you want to rewatch or re-listen to the conversation, or if you want to share it with other people, we will have the recordings posted and produced. And if you're on the New School or the Cancer Choices mailing list, or if you follow the New School feeds on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, you'll be notified when the recordings are posted. So thank you all so much for being with us at the New School at Commonweal today, and we will see you next time, everybody.
Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't.